for 30 plus years. I've seen every type of child grow up.
Instead of giving me what I wanted, she gave me what I needed, which was truth.
Don't let emotions win. Let truth win.
Do your very best, and you should have a lot of fun while you do it. And the better you get at something, the more fun you're going to have at something.
You moms and dads are wired with everything you need to be a parent to a great kid. Welcome to Parenting Great Kids. This is episode number 133. Wow. And I'm your host, Dr. Meg Meeker. Today, my guest is a friend and brilliant woman, Wendy Weckstein. Wendy's the Director of Wellness Programming at Northern Michigan Psychiatric Services. She received her bachelor's degree in science and physical therapy and her master's from the University of Michigan. She's a certified wellness consultant through the NAFC, certified in mindfulness-based stress reduction for teens, and is an MBSR teacher through Brown University's Mindfulness Center School of Public Health. Wendy provides comprehensive health and wellness evaluations for children, teens, and young adults, as well as individualized, evidence-based fitness and wellness programming to support their mental health goals. As always in this episode, I'm going to share my points to ponder so you can have something to do right away when the podcast is done. And remember, please don't just download the episodes. Click that subscribed button because I need you to join my parenting revolution. We're on iTunes, and the PGK podcast is also available in the Google Play Store and on Stitcher. Friends, I need to tell you about my brand new free webinar called When No Stops Working. It's all about teaching your kids how to stop being rude, backtalk, fighting, and how to get them to get along with you and their siblings. Check it out, meekerparenting.com. You will love it. The webinar is free when no stops working. So parents, thanks for listening. Stay with me. I want you now to listen in on a conversation I had with Wendy Weckstein. You are really going to enjoy this interview. Well, Wendy, welcome to my podcast, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Meg. It's great to be here today.
You know, you've been teaching kids and adults about the importance of living a healthy lifestyle, and you work with them to develop tools for emotional and physical well-being. And I will say, you're extraordinary at it. So how did you get started in this?
Well, it's a good question. Early on, really, in my career as a physical therapist, it became clear to me that addressing lifestyle as a critical part of clinical care was something that was being neglected, really not viewed as a priority. And so it became obvious to me that across the board, really, in healthcare, this was a significant limiting factor to our ability to achieve desired outcomes or to reach our treatment objectives. And it contributed in a large way to recurrence of disease or re-injury. Notice that it limited the possibility for patients to achieve their greatest potential, maybe their fullest level of independence as well.
So you saw, through working with people physically, that it was lifestyle and something else going on inside them that was really affecting their physical health?
Yeah. So if you think about it, there's I did the math on this. There's 168 hours in every week. And so as a physical therapist, if I'm seeing them once a week, what are they doing those other 167 hours? And what they do during that time in terms of behavior and lifestyle can profoundly impact our ability for quality of care and really to have these sustainable results. So it's just an area that I've always felt clearly needed to be addressed. And also, my personal lived and felt experience of leading a healthy lifestyle, integrating it every day, into my daily routine, and just noticing the profound impact that it's had on my life, physically and emotionally. That, along with all of the science and research and studies, right, that show the impact of lifestyle on disease prevention, reversal of disease, better management of disease, quality of life. So all of this, naturally drew me in that progression of moving towards wellness and bringing this not only into a number of different settings clinically, but also to the general public.
People might intuitively know what you're talking about, but most people don't know how to get there. And I would say you really practice what you preach. And I mean, that's what's so cool because, if you look at your lifestyle, you're very, very healthy and you're really living what you talk about. Now, you've integrated your work into an outpatient psychiatric clinic at Northern Michigan Psychiatric Services. How did that come about? And why was it important for you to do this work in an outpatient psychiatric clinic?
So interestingly, actually, this work I'm doing right now at Northern Michigan Psychiatric Services, I have to say it's probably the most rewarding time of my life. I was drawn here, actually, I'd have to say pulled here by my husband, who's a child and adolescent psychiatrist. And he was seeing, really seeing what I was doing, primarily in brain injury programs. That's where I spent much of my career setting up wellness programs. And he really wanted to be able to offer this within his clinic. In this practice, particularly, he, along with the entire team, they recognize and acknowledge the essential and critical benefits of lifestyle in terms of mental health benefits. And so what a pleasure to be involved here and to be asked to integrate this into their program. So that's basically what drew me or brought me here. And I've been here for a number of years now.
Yeah. Now, you do a lot of mindfulness training. Is that correct? Now, a lot of people don't know what mindfulness is. They've heard about it, but can you explain to us what it really is?
Yeah. So, yes, I do quite a bit of one-on-one and group mindfulness training and offer mindfulness classes. That's a huge part and a necessary component that I integrate into an entire comprehensive wellness program. But right now, mindfulness is this catchphrase. Yeah. It's right. It's trend. It seems to be somewhat trendy, but it. So people have a basic idea of what they think it means, and I'm more than happy to describe it in more detail. So basically, on the simplest level, a simple way of describing it is it's our choice to pay attention to the present moment and to do so on purpose without judgment. Instead of where we often spend our time, which is traveling into the past and into the future with worries and ruminations and judgments and self-criticism, expectations. And so entering actively and actively engaging into an experience with more inquisitiveness, curiosity, with freshness, as if it's the first time. And this is just a simple definition.
That's simple? Okay. Well, I was just going to say, can we unpack this a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to try to reflect what I'm hearing. So what you're talking about is to focus on this moment in time, like right now, you and I talking, and to say, what am I experiencing? What am I feeling? How is my body reacting? When you say to stay in this present moment and focus on it, how do we do that?
Good question. And I'm going to come back to what you were laughing when I said this is simple. John Kabat-Zinn, who is where I've done most of my training with this work, he says a wonderful quote that, this turning our attention to the present moment sounds relatively simple, but it's actually the hardest thing in the world to do, which is really interesting. So you were right on when you mentioned that. So yes, you named it fairly well, that it's this conscious decision, this deliberate choice to shift our attention from where it has traveled in the past and future to whatever it is that arises in the moment. So yes, that can be recognizing and bringing conscious awareness to our thought patterns, to our emotions, maybe to how that's manifesting in the form of a physical sensation, right? Our emotions and this body-mind connection, bringing awareness to this, and then also bringing awareness and touching closely in perhaps to our five senses.
Mm.
So bringing awareness to our surroundings, to what we hear and what we see and what we smell or taste or feel, so that we can gain more insight, learn more, and investigate what's actually happening in the moment. Instead of really interesting, we are wonderful storytellers. We create intricate narratives that are often false. We wrap our experiences in layers and layers of emotion and meaning that make it really hard to see what's actually there to be known.
And do we do that because of our past experiences? And so our past experiences sort of layer what we're telling ourselves now?
Absolutely. That's definitely one of them. It's our past experiences. It's our associations, memories. Much of it has to do with just simply human nature. I like to call it our human condition. This is easy. It's an easy path for us, or a slippery slope for us to fall down. We have very strong, natural neuronal pathways that take us down this path. And so mindfulness, what we're doing is we are actually working with the neuroplasticity of our brain to retrain our attention, to cultivate awareness, and to strengthen and create these new neuronal pathways so that they're more accessible, easier to fall into when needed.
It sounds like you're doing a lot in that moment because in mindfulness, through mindfulness, you're changing your thought processes, you're changing your storytelling, perhaps you're resolving some past issues, and you're changing your brain. I mean, you're really creating new neuronal pathways. That's a lot. So no wonder mindfulness is so powerful in a person's life.
Absolutely. And this is a practice. This is why you hear it called mindfulness practice or meditation practice. It's like any other practice, soccer practice or swim practice, or when we weight train. It's strengthening a muscle. It's actually strengthening the tissues in our brain. So the more that we practice, the more we are laying down and setting in and establishing this pathway. And the pathways that we then tend to not use, just like a muscle that's not used, will begin to atrophy or begin to prune away. So entering into this with without expectation, with gentleness, knowing that this is a process, and bringing kindness and compassion to the process is a very important part of mindfulness.
That's a hard part. Because I think in general, I work with a lot of mothers and fathers, and one thing they really have difficulty with is being kind to themselves and non-judgmental to themselves, because it seems like, parents are constantly looking forward to preparing, and are they going to do it well enough, and where should their kids go to school, and what if they this, and what if they that, and it can really sort of drive them crazy. Now, I want to get a little more specific here with you, so I'm going to press on you because this really does work. Can you describe some areas of maybe health or well-being very specifically where mindfulness can really help a person?
Absolutely. If it's okay, Meg, what to get me to that place, I just want to describe a little bit more about what's happening, and then I'll lead into some of these profound potential benefits. So if you think about it, I think one way we can relate to this a little easier, it's clear to us, is we notice that we have a lot of loud, incessant chatter going on in our brains all the time. And actually, it's in this space of chatter where where we are traveling to the past or to the future, where we're wishing things were different, where we are regretting or maybe being self-critical or judging a particular action, or we're wanting things to be a different way, or we're racing to get to that next moment. With an expectation of how it will be. So this chatter is loud, incessant, it's chaotic, it's exhausting. And this is where our suffering, this is where we tend to suffer the most, our strong emotions. They're being, our emotions, this chatter is being perceived by our brain as if it is a threat, an acute threat. And we tend to be in a more constant state of fight flight, as if we were faced with directly in front of a tiger. And it causes this instantaneous release, this rush of cortisol, really over 30 different hormones in our body that begin to surge through our body to prepare us physically and emotionally to be in this state of instantaneous reactivity, ready to fight off that tiger. Our heart begins to race. Often you notice breathing. This is where this awareness of what's happening in the body as red flags or as signals to us that we've entered into this state of fight flight. But there is no tiger. There is no real threat. This is really just false alarms. And so with mindfulness, one of the things we work on with this practice is bringing awareness to when we are in this state of mind, when we have entered into fight flight, which has activated a part of our nervous system called our sympathetic nervous system.
Do people know it when they're in it? What does it feel like?
Well, typically we are unaware. Typically we walk through life unaware. This is, we're on autopilot. We don't recognize, and mindfulness is about bringing in awareness. So yes, you are able to bring awareness to this, to know this and to recognize it simply by stopping and pausing and intentionally bringing awareness to your thought patterns, your emotions, and to these red flags or physiological sensations in our body that give us this clue that, right now I am being reactive. My emotions are driving the bus. I don't feel like I have control. I'm on this treadmill that I feel like I'm stuck. I'm paralyzed. I am helpless.
Boy, that's me.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm sure it's everybody in our audience can relate to that. So, okay. So, keep us moving forward.
Yes, I'll move us. Okay, yeah. So almost getting to that point of what this helps. So here we are now, starting off with this awareness, which is essential. It is part of the centerpiece of mindfulness. Just stopping, intentionally bringing awareness. And this is what's wonderful about mindfulness is that we all have the capabilities. We have the inner resources already within us. We are whole. We are complete and capable of this. It's just simply that we have not untapped or uncovered this power, this resource within us. So as we learn mindfulness, we learn that we can stop and pause. We learn to cultivate our ability to bring awareness to our emotional state. And then we also learn that we have the ability and the choice, which is a big word, to shift our attention from this loud chatter that has drifted away and come back into the moment with one or more of our five senses, maybe with the physical sensation of our breath, with our feet and the touch of the soles of our feet to the surface of the earth. And as we do this, what's most amazing to me neurophysiologically, that when we intentionally direct our attention here and now, this disengages fight flight. This activates what's called, as you know, our parasympathetic nervous system. And we can enter into this state of calmness, peacefulness, where the chatter suddenly begins to settle down into a low simmer. And we open up this space in our minds where we suddenly see that there is clarity. We can gain insight into, again, as I mentioned before, what is actually happening here that's not wrapped up in my emotions. And we're able in this way to as now moving forward to your original question of what can this help us with? Well, my goodness, one of the, I guess, the most greatest possibilities or potentials of this practice is that we can become less reactive. We can pause and make the choice to respond with more thoughtfulness, more wisely, with more kindness or compassion, right? More wisdom, maybe with more forgiveness, to whatever that original trigger may have been. And so other areas where this really helps, to get back to your question now. So this reactivity, we can impact and affect this. It affects our ability, our focus and attention, our overall cognition as we practice and strengthen these pathways, greater ability to perform at school or at work. A lot of studies, over thousands of studies that have been done on disease prevention.
Wow. What kind, like physical diseases?
Physical diseases of the body as well as diseases of the mind. So studies that have shown that with engaging in regular mindfulness practice and meditation, we have the ability to affect heart disease, to have an impact on skin disease, cancers, diabetes. The list goes on and on, to impact and affect or to help with the symptoms of ADHD, anxiety, depression. I mean, I have a list here that just goes on and on. Eating disorders, self-harming behaviors, addictions, pain management. Oh, big one.
Really? Really?
Yes.
So say I came into you and I have, which I do, migraine headaches. And I came in and I said, Wendy, I really want to learn how mindfulness can help the pain of my migraine headaches. Where would you start?
Oh, well, I love this question because I too have migraines. And so I've had the ability to explore for myself the possibility here. And again, this isn't easy. This is challenging initially, but there is quite a bit of potential here to affect this. What we typically do when we have pain, when we're experiencing physical pain, is we resist it. We fight against it. We don't want it. This chatter starts in our brain.
So you're not going to tell me that I have to embrace it, are you?
Well, let's talk about
it. Okay. Keep going. Keep going.
Right. And we do this in our life with everything. We don't want this unpleasant.
No way. Yeah.
Yeah. Why would we, right? Why would we want something unpleasant in our lives? But with mindfulness, we bring awareness to the fact that as we push away and resist what is here anyways, we're actually increasing tension. Right. We're making the experience actually grow because we are attaching and entangling ourselves in these emotions. And it's so subtle, very difficult initially to notice that is what we've done. And so with mindfulness practice, we begin to explore this by very gently touching in and leaning into the experience. Maybe sometimes just dipping your toe in. And just taking a quick peek, just turning your.
That.
Yeah. I think we all can. We fear it though, right? We have a fear. And, with my years of practice and actually the time I think I had the strongest, aha moment with this was at a silent retreat I attended where I did experience a disabling migraine and my rescue meds weren't working. And so I said, okay, here we go. This is my opportunity. These provide us with opportunities, challenges, body and mind. So this opened up an opportunity for me to explore this in silence with a lengthy meditation and to just rest in the stillness of my breath, in the present moment. And as I felt ready with kindness and compassion, I could turn my inner eye directly towards this feeling.
The pain?
And the pain. Okay. To really turn my inner eye right to where this was happening. And at first, maybe just being able to look for a split second and to recognize, oops, I'm becoming reactive. I'm going to come back to just maybe my breath. When I felt ready, I maybe dipped my toe in and I started exploring it and teasing it apart. Oh, it's sharp here and it's moving here and it's throbbing a little. And wow, it has texture. Oh, I'm getting reactive, I'm going to come back to my breath. And I did this over and over. And each time I'd go back in to explore, I noticed that it was dissolving somehow, like magic. And interesting. And so this is what's possible. Not saying that this is easy, but in our life, this is something with mindfulness that we begin to touch into what's possible here.
Mm-hmm. When people come to you, like you said, you've been doing this a lot. What are some of the more common problems that you see mindfulness turn around and really help?
A number of them. One of them I'd have to say, which has been just wonderful to experience and to witness with my teens and adults. Especially my teens, I'd have to say. They're like sponges and open to this experience. So many of the teens dealing with strong anxiety or adults, and that experience panic attacks.
Yeah. Can you walk me through that? Because it's exactly right. And now with the COVID, I'm seeing a number of teenagers come in with depression, and they're just scared. These kids are really scared. And so I don't necessarily know how to do that. So if they came into your office and they said, I want to learn how to use mindfulness to get past my anxiety. So you would sit them down, and then would you have them close their eyes? How would you begin them through the process?
Right. And there's a lot to that, but I'll tell you sort of as I'm working with them, we ultimately get to, I talk about these 4 steps. And I use them in different acronyms for the teens as well as for the adults, but it all begins with this stopping and pausing. And so the first step is to just bring awareness to the fact that right now I'm about to enter, or I'm within the midst of fear and panic, severe anxiety, and pausing and just noticing what, like I had mentioned earlier, how does this feel in my body? What am I thinking, and what are these emotions? And maybe even labeling it. You know, I am fearful, anxious, panicked. And then making the choice at this point to simply take 1 or 2 deep breaths, just to help with this pause. Create space, because remember, with fight flight, there's no space.
Right.
With fight flight, we are instantaneously driven into some form of habitual reactivity or habitual self-harming behavior, whatever that may be. So how do we intentionally open up and create some space? So stopping, pausing, taking a couple deep breaths, and then choosing to focus on perhaps the sensations of the breath. Usually, to simplify it, we sometimes talk about, we have this choice to attend to the sensations of the breath, perhaps to the feeling of our feet touching the earth or our hip bones touching the chair. Maybe taking the cotton out of your ears, figuratively, or, and actually listening intentionally to the sounds, maybe the ambient noises or sounds, perhaps opening your eyes and focusing on narrowing in attention, or maybe broadening, maybe just simply looking up and noticing the clouds or the trees, smelling, opening up to smell. And during this process, with patience and resting here, sometimes fairly quickly, we have already disengaged fight flight. And the next step then is to proceed thoughtfully, then to perhaps be able to look at this from a different or fresher perspective and make a wiser choice.
Parents, I hope you're enjoying my conversation with Wendy. We need to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of my conversation with Wendy. People in panic attacks feel it's almost like fear has taken over their body. And sometimes, I'll say, let's sort of shift your thought. But they say, I can't shift my thought because something has taken over me. But what you're saying is you really can crack that thought and move in there and dissipate it by going through this mindfulness process. Is that what you're saying?
It's possible. This possibility is there. And is a very real possibility. One thing I'd like to emphasize is, this body awareness is extremely important with mindfulness. This is sometimes the key that opens up our insight of awareness into the fact that we even are in the midst of panic or fear.
It's not just about thinking. So talk to us about body awareness and how people can do that.
Yeah. And so with mindfulness, we do body awareness practices in a number of different ways in order to experience and to recognize that we actually live inside this vehicle, to bring awareness to this body that we live in and this connection, direct channel to our emotions and our body. There's this connection. And so we do this through mindful movement or a gentle yoga practice, bringing awareness and using the physical sensations of the body to help anchor us to the present moment, just like we may use the sensations of breath or sound or smell or sight. I work with mindful movement as well as mindful walking. And so mindful walking is something that many of the participants really connect with because we can do this and enjoy the process of being mindful, experiencing the sensations of the body as well as our five senses during walking. We also do this with body scans. And so a body scan, in stillness, experiencing and turning your inner eye, sort of shining that flashlight onto the different parts of your body intentionally and waking up your body region by region. It's quite profound, and noticing what is there, just bringing awareness to whatever the sensations may be, just as they are.
Okay, so I'm lying down on the floor and you are coaching me on how to be aware of my body's senses. Do you say things like, what do your feet feel like now? Or how do you get people to be aware of their body sensations?
Yeah. And again, this is something that gently entering into this practice, because it's very common during these practices for our mind to wander. This is normal. This is right.
Yes.
So our minds think. This is what it does. Our nose smells. Our brains think, and it's nothing we should again fight against or resist. So recognizing that as our mind wanders, and I'll talk about how I guide it. Our mind will wander. And not to be harsh, just to be kind, and to know, again, bring awareness. Oh, that's interesting. That's where my thought is. I'm planning dinner, or I'm thinking about a conversation I had yesterday. And instead of being dragged away down a rabbit hole into the unconscious, maybe wrapping it in emotions, just noticing it. And then with firmness but kindness, redirecting intentionally your attention back to wherever it is that I am guiding. So it's a very, we do this very kindly with ourselves, recognizing we go in and out and just coming back. And it's this practice without any expectation or harshness. So yes, I may start with lying down and noticing the breath or the contact of the body, and then ask those who are joining me to direct their attention down to the sensations of their toes, just to bring awareness, or to the soles of their feet. Maybe to notice the tingling or the pulsing or the contact of the sock or the coolness of the temperature. And then my mind may wander, but then when coming back, and it's an enlightening, insightful process. And doing this also accepting your body just the way it is without wanting to change anything. Maybe if there is a difficult or uncomfortable sensation, doing your best to see if you can simply be with the sensation just as it is, separating yourself, that doesn't define you. Or if it's too much, maybe coming back and distracting yourself with the breath, not forcing it. So it's,
I'm feeling more relaxed just as you're talking. Because really what you're talking about is so important from my perspective for young kids and teenagers, because you're talking about quieting their inner world. And our kids are so stressed constantly. And they feel it internally, but then you add to that all the auditory and visual stimulation that never lets up. It's hard for me to convince parents. If you have a son with bad ADHD, the worst thing you can do is put him in front of a violent video game. He said, well, he concentrates. Well, sure, because his mind is racing and what's happening on the screen. It's racing and screaming at him. So really, it sounds to me like learning this technique, you can close out a lot of that external noise, like you talked about. And I think that would be amazingly helpful for kids and adults with ADHD. Just as you described, okay, you're sitting there, and I admit, I go to pray, I fall asleep, and then I beat myself up because I fell asleep. Okay. But you're really talking about paying attention to where your mind is going and just kindly pulling it back. So are you saying a child or an adult with pretty bad ADHD can really change the neural pathways of their brain by retraining it to stay focused on something?
Definitely. I mean, to a degree. And of course, there's a spectrum of attentional issues that we all have, all of us. And those that are suffering from more significant attentional issues with ADHD, this practice is difficult. But if they enter into the practice gently and realizing that if you wander and your attention drifts away 1,000 times, that's 1,000 opportunities to redirect your attention and to cultivate this ability to bring moment-to-moment awareness to all the experiences of your life, and to cultivate this ability to let go of what's not needed, and to strengthen slowly these neuronal pathways in your brain, again, like weight training. So it has been shown to have an impact, absolutely, on attentional issues if it's approached in that way. And that's often difficult. In the midst of my classes, no matter how many times I mention that, people are still harsh. They beat themselves up, like you said. Oh, I wandered. I didn't do it right. There's no wrong way to do this. There's only accepting what is. And if what is that I am wandering and my attention has drifted, then each time you notice, celebrating that and saying, this is an opportunity now. I am now present with my thought. This is what it's about. It did not take me away, or maybe it took me away and now I'm present with the thought. It's what is. And I'm bringing myself back.
Talk to me about people who have experienced significant trauma as a child, sexual abuse. I think they would be terrified of a process like this.
Absolutely. And this trauma sensitivity is extremely important, especially in all mindfulness, with mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is, that is where my training, and I'm a teacher of MBSR. Trauma sensitivity is something that has always been something that they've been sensitive towards, but even more and more as the years have moved on. And as, we realize that mindfulness can be quite beneficial. Also, it can be harmful if people are not ready or are not guided very carefully through the process. Because mindfulness, a lot of what mindfulness is recognizing in any given moment what is needed by our body and our mind, and taking care, offering ourselves self-care. And when we are thrust so quickly into fight, flight, and more so with PTSD or severe trauma, that can be quite a difficult and challenging experience. And so often I interview people that are going to take part in my class. We talk about traumas, recent or prior traumas, and often I'll work with them one-on-one in addition to the weekly class, and modify their meditations and their guidance so that they learn strategies and tools to enter into this feeling more in control and safe. So you brought up a very important
Well, it's
point.
so common. I mean, PTSD and sexual trauma.
Yeah.
And I've often had, say, a parent of a 14-year-old say, my daughter was molested by our neighbor when she was 11. Can you help her work it out? And in my experience, I'm not a counselor or psychiatrist, but some kids can't. I mean, it seems like they need some emotional and cognitive maturity before they can do that. Do you agree, or do you think that if you take a child who has been traumatized 3 years later, you can help them through mindfulness? Or what would you recommend?
Well, there is mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy, which is something that has grown from this practice of mindfulness. Somebody who has experienced trauma like that, mindfulness can be quite effective. A program like mindfulness-based stress reduction, if it's done in conjunction with the right amount of support.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working carefully with a therapist who understands mindfulness as you're going through this intensive training, perhaps delicately we can work towards this. And it has that, again, potential if it is done slowly and carefully and tenderly with this individual. Absolutely. But having a therapist involved as well, is very important, and working with them and knowing if this is the right time to be engaging in this.
Okay.
It might not be exactly the right time to move forward, to be leaning in, as I mentioned. A lot of this is about leaning in and seeing what's actually there, unwrapping and untangling ourselves, seeing through the muck and knowing what's really happening. But if it's going to thrust us and be harmful, then we need to back away from that and know what's needed now. Yeah. And maybe this isn't the moment for that.
One of the questions is, can a person do this to themselves? If you explain how to do mindfulness, can I go in my study and take an hour a day and just do it? Or is this something you have to learn from a coach?
Well, that's a great question. There are absolutely avenues to be doing this on your own and to start to tap into what's possible with mindfulness, to start to experience these profound benefits. There's apps, there's different videos and programs that are free. There's a tremendous amount of them. Even Brown University has been offering throughout the pandemic. This is where MBSR training occurs, in free guided meditations on a weekly basis. And so that's one area where you can enter into this experience safely and gain some awareness of what's possible. Also, one thing that you could do right after this podcast, you could walk away and bring some of this very simply into your everyday activities. So you can be not only mindful with walking and with eating, but I often sneak away and incorporate mindfulness with washing my hands. That's like entering into this brief. It's a lovely, or washing the dishes or folding the laundry. So being present in terms of feeling my breath and my body, maybe noticing the activity of my mind or the felt sense of an emotion, stopping, and then intentionally choosing to wash my hands and actively engage in the experience. So for 2 minutes or 1 minute, as you sing happy birthday twice, right? When you wash your hands, actually hearing the sound of the water, directing my attention, smelling the soap, watching, the bubbles and the lather, feeling the lather and the heat, bringing in all my senses, including this awareness of my breath. And often, 60 seconds later, I've entered into a state of peacefulness. I have settled down this angst and this activity and see things with more clarity. And I can just walk out of the restroom or whatever with fresh perspectives, which is a lot of what this is about. We can do this anytime we want with any activity. Yeah. So you could take that right now and do that.
Right now. I would imagine with the pandemic, you've been doing a lot of training, MBSR training via screens. How has that impacted your practice? And is it different if you're with a person versus on a screen? Has that been hard?
Interesting, because when this first happened and I realized, okay, here we go. Do I or don't I? Began to jump into this whole Zoom world. And I did. I looked at it as an opportunity and did. And I did not know how it would go. I had fear about what would happen. But I have to tell you, it has been a pleasant there have been some amazing silver linings from this experience. As in any crisis, often we find opportunity. And so, of course, I'd like to be one-on-one with people. There are tremendous benefits about that. I miss that experience. But I have a large screen TV and I see everybody's face right in front of me. We are actively engaged in the process. There are breakout rooms, ways to join in on whiteboards and shared screens. And I can record. So if people miss a session or want to review the session. So there's actually been some lovely benefits, and I have found it, and I believe the participants have found it to be a wonderful experience too. So I'm going to always now, I've chosen, I'm going to do sort of a hybrid of offering a Zoom class and an in-person class when this ends.
I think a lot of people would in some ways prefer a Zoom because they can do it at home. They can be in their pajamas. They can do it anytime, whenever your classes are offered. And I think, if somebody were hesitant or a little timid in doing this, it gives them a little chance to sort of watch and wait rather than having somebody look right at them. So I think it would take some of the fear out of it for some people. Now, you talk about classes that you offer, and you do mindfulness-based stress reduction classes for teenagers and adults. Tell us about those classes, if you would. Do you put teens with adults? Do you do teens separately from adults?
No, I offer these as separate programs. They are both mindfulness-based stress reduction, 8-week structured classes. The teen class is also known as MBSRT, or stressed teens. So I advertise that as my stressed teens class. And that's basically a modified version of the original MBSR class that was developed by Gina Beagle, who is somebody who was trained from John Kabat-Zinn. I'll talk about that class in a minute. And she wanted to offer the same opportunity that would be more accessible and more developmentally appropriate, looking at more modern day issues that teens are dealing with, including this technology era that we're in. And so that's been incredible. I think she was genius in how she designed it. And I have felt honored to be using that curriculum and expand from that for the teens. The adult class, the mindfulness-based stress reduction class, that is also an 8-week group-based, highly experiential class that offers intensive mindfulness training to help with a host of stress-related emotional, physical, psychological issues. We work again with movement practices, yoga, meditation, and looking deeper and exploring into these habitual ways and patterns of reacting and behaving and thinking. So, and it also includes a full day silent retreat that is guided that I've been doing on Zoom, which also offers.
How do you do that on Zoom?
Yeah. So, right. This was another way that I wondered, oh my goodness, because I did it at this beautiful retreat center and you could walk in the woods and the whole, atmosphere of a retreat center. Well, again, the silver lining of this is bringing this practice in this seamless way of continuity without your typical distractions in your own environment is quite powerful. I have found. I've engaged in a 7-day silent retreat myself at home.
You didn't talk for 7 days?
For 7 days at home. But this is how they're being offered now. And I have to tell you, it was quite profound to do it in my own space.
I could see that because then you learn it's almost like you redefine your space. A lot of people will walk into their home and immediately feel a lot of tension because they're used to this happening and this happening. Yeah. But if you break that pattern and say, my home can be a safe, quiet refuge. Now, it's hard for people who have a toddler and a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, but even to kind of create a space in their home. I remember when our kids are little, a couple days a week, I would have a high school kid come over after school, and I would have her play with the kids for an hour, and I would go into my bedroom and sit on the floor and just be quiet. And that, I mean, I didn't know anything about this, but that was huge to just sort of create quiet in the middle of your day. So interestingly, my bedroom became my sort of quiet place. Let's see. So do you feel like, have you become busier because of COVID? Have you noticed a shift in the number of patients you have?
I think there was plenty of stress to go around even before COVID. Unfortunately, that's always part of our lives. But yes, with COVID, people have been reaching out. These teens are really struggling right now. And I've had so many parents reach out or other mental health professionals to make referrals to this program. So absolutely, the mental health, there's been such a decline in our mental health with COVID and the polarization of our country in so many different ways.
It's hard.
It's hard, but this is also a wonderful, again, these challenges are also these wonderful opportunities to begin to engage and touch in on this practice and to see what may be possible. And that's how I like to look at it. Challenges open up these opportunities for learning and insight.
Wendy, I love acronyms, and you have an acronym for mindfulness that really helps. What is that?
Well, there's actually a few. One of them that is more widely used probably is just this acronym of STOP and visualizing a stop sign and then the STOP. So visualizing a stop sign when you feel that you may be suffering in any way. And stopping is the S. The T is take 1 or 2 deep breaths. The O is to then observe your thoughts, your bodily sensations, your emotions, and then to observe and pay attention to perhaps what's happening in the present moment. Maybe one or more of your 5 senses, the breath. And then P is this proceed. So proceed thoughtfully. So that's one that people sometimes hang on to and like. Another one that I actually created on my own is NIPR, NIPR, kind of like nip it in the bud. And I created this for my teens, really with this thought of allowing them to continue to gain this awareness that they have control, they have the choice. And so N, again, is notice. Notice my thoughts, my emotions, the fact that I am maybe in the midst of reacting right now. I is for I have a choice.
I love it. I love it.
Yep. That's the key. Just right away, wait, I'm not being controlled here. I'm not dragged away. I have a choice in the matter. I can choose what to do. The P is then to pause. Pause and either breathe or focus your attention on one of your 5 senses, sensations of your body, and anchor yourself firmly into the present moment, this anchor. And then the P, again, is to then proceed with greater awareness, with fresher perspectives. Another one that I like to use is PNF. It's for past, the F is future, and the N is now. So PNF.
Past, now, future.
And so basically that is when you're in the midst of suffering and again, stopping and bringing awareness to that. So it's all about stopping and pausing, asking yourself, where am I right now? I'm obviously in turmoil. Where are my thoughts? Are they ruminating somewhere about something that's causing discomfort in the past? Or am I ruminating about something that isn't even here yet? And then asking yourself a simple question, is this helping me in any way? And if the answer is no, let it go and return to the present moment. So PNF is something that teens and adults like to use. I use it.
I can use that. And yeah. And if it's something, if it's something that's not helping, let it go. I love that. Well, thank you. I'm an acronym person. I guess I'm a simple-minded person, and I can't remember letters, and letters do trigger, thoughts. So thank you for that. We only have a couple minutes left, and obviously without using names. So, patients can't identify themselves. Can you just give us one or two examples, very specific examples, where you worked with, say, a teenager, and you found, what the problem was and how you found an improvement and a change, sort of a before and after?
Yeah, I've had working with the teens often brings me to tears, which it's just so meaningful, this experience. And I'm so touched by working with the adults and this privilege of witnessing their journey through this. It is a lifetime journey. So a teen that I think of came into this class, strongly encouraged or almost, I would say, forced, to be part of this class. And she entered into it shaking and crying, such anxiety, severe depression, and resistance to this experience. And I remember it was in our first meditation with her. We went outside. This was when we were in person, and we all sat on the grass, and I introduced them to a 5 senses meditation. And that's where I guide them through opening up each of their senses one at a time, and just noticing what arises as they do this. And when I came to her, didn't know what to expect. She may have chosen to just not engage. And she just told me that for the first time, as long as she could remember, she felt peaceful, and she felt like she was in this world more vividly, like the world around her seemed more real and bright and vivid. And that, just that one simple, and then she went on to just explode with this process and do amazing. I have so many examples that I could share. We could do a whole podcast.
So her anxiety, what you sound is her anxiety and her fear really just dissipated through going this just through eight weeks.
Yes. And then one of the things that also the same individual did, she was someone who would leave school constantly because of panic attacks. She barely could make it through a day. Her mom had to pick her up almost, I think, every day, basically. And by the end of this class, she wasn't missing any school. She was recognizing and able to kind of stop this panic attack in its tracks by using her 5 senses, by stopping and bringing awareness and pausing. And then she had a number of different tools she would use for her 5 senses that would release her and calm down the chatter, and she was able to stay in school. And so, that was these are the type of things that happen very realistically, or potentially. I want to use the potential.
Well, and I just wanted to put a plug in there for teenagers too, because, I've never met a kid I didn't like, because when I see an angry teenager, I see this little balled up kid sort of in a fetal position going, please, 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 please help me. And even just stopping and noticing. And then, what you do is you sort of dig inside with her. And I think it brings such tremendous relief, because, we misunderstand our teenagers so much. We have to finish. And, one more thing, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. A, can our listeners anywhere in the country or even the world sign up for one of your classes?
Absolutely. One of those benefits has been that I have people from all around the country as part of my Zoom class. It's wonderful. So yes, absolutely.
And how can they find you, and how can they sign up?
Okay, so the easiest way is to go to my website, which is www.mindfulnesstc, which stands for Traverse City. So mindfulnesstc.com. And that takes you directly to my class page that's part of Northern Michigan Psychiatric Services website. And on there, you can download class brochures. You'll see register here. And the other thing to note, I must say, is that we, along with Northern Physicians Organization, we offer full and partial financial scholarships. So nobody is ever turned away from this experience if they are dealing with financial hardship.
Wendy, this has been extraordinary. I'm ready to sign up. I think as you're talking, I think of so many parents I've talked with whose kids, even as young as 6 years old, 5 years old, are so anxious and fearful, particularly during this time. And I just want to encourage every single person listening, whether you're an adult, whether you're a parent, whether you're an elderly person, if you're struggling with something, or even if you're not, go to the website, mindfulnesstc.com, and learn about these classes. I mean, it's only 8 weeks long, but it really can transform your life. So, Wendy, thank you so much. This has been a fabulous podcast. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, Meg.
Now, on to my points to ponder. 1, integrate quiet into your world. We, including our kids, live with stimulation overload, visual, emotional, mental, and psychological. And, many of our kids live with physical overload as well. The result of that is that our bodies are in constant fight or flight mode. This is terribly stressful on us, and eventually we can't take it anymore, and our bodies begin to shut down, as well as our minds. This happens with our kids as well. None of us was made to live this way. It causes depression, anxiety, and hurts our relationships with our loved ones and friends. And that's why it's so important that we intentionally work on integrating quiet into our days. 2, help your kids slow down. Slowing down isn't in most kids' natures. And to tell you the truth, it's hard for us as parents to help our kids slow down too, because we like it when they're busy. Kids want to do exactly what their friends are doing. They want to compete. They're constantly in a drive to keep up and do better than their friends around them. This is subconscious, but again, it's really bad for them emotionally and physically. Often, we parents see our kids' behavior and we encourage it. We want our kids to be better than others as well. And one way to help our kids pull back is to allow them, 1, extracurricular activity after school. Yes, I said 1. And this shocks some parents, but remember this: kids need more time with you for emotional health than they do playing soccer, dancing ballet, etc., etc. Number 3, play. Most of us are so focused on making sure our kids are happy that we forget to have fun with them. Kids who are anxious need play. Kids who are depressed need play. Kids who are having troubled relationships with their families need play. And this doesn't mean playing on their own with friends. It means playing with the family, and that includes you. How wonderful would it be if you had memories of your parents playing soccer with you in the backyard, having family game night every Saturday night, and going on a bike ride every weekend? You don't need to have every member of the family play together at the same time, but kids need play with you, their parents, and you need play with them. Yes, even when they're teenagers. Parents, I love answering your questions, so please keep sending them in to me. You can email me any question to askmeg@megmeekermd.com. Again, that's askmeg@megmeekermd.com. I want to thank my guest, Wendy Weckstein, for joining me on the show today. If you want to find out more about Wendy and the work that she is doing, I encourage you to contact Northern Michigan Psychiatric Services. So now let's recap my points to ponder. 1, integrate quiet into your world. 2, help your kids slow down. And 3, play. So until next time, parents, always remember, great kids are raised, not born.